Good afternoon, and welcome to this year's edition of Lisbon Law and Tech. It is with great pleasure that we meet again for the fourth edition of this event, bringing together technology and law. Only a year has passed, but the speed of technology advances and the challenge of digitalization accelerated by the pandemic highlighted new topics. The Metaverse, Web3, NFTs, and a key question for our future. What are the real challenges to the justice system and law firms brought by technology? Where are we heading to? Please join this discussion and share your thoughts and ideas on social media and website. Reach us for any questions, and thank you for joining us for the first day of the event. Today's panel will focus on Metaverse and law, real and impact cases. Ricardo Henriques, partner with Abreu Advogados, is going to host the session, and he will introduce you to our very distinguished speakers. Ricardo, the floor is yours.
Of this inaugural session of the Lisbon Law and Tech for 2022. Where we'll talk about this important and exciting topic of the Metaverse. Without further ado, I will start by introducing our panel. Today we have important contributions from Norberto Andrade and Coty Monteverde. Norberto Andrade is a global public policy and tech ethics expert, as well as a legal scholar and researcher, working at the intersection of law, governance, and new technologies. Norberto is Meta's director and global policy lead for digital and AI ethics and creator and founder of Open Loop, a global experimental governance program that bridges the gap between tech and policy innovation. Norberto is also professor at IE Law School, an affiliated scholar at Stanford Law School, Center for Internet and Society. He holds a PhD in law, policy, and technology and has successfully published numerous academic articles, reports, and book chapters in the field of law and technology. Welcome, Norberto. Coty Monteverde has begun her career at Deloitte as a strategy consultant in the telco sector, before joining Santander, where she has been working for almost 14 years. Coty has spent most of her time in innovation areas, and for the last year, she has been immersed in the management of blockchain projects. Coty is currently head of the Crypto and Blockchain Center of Excellence at Santander and vice chairwoman of Alastria Blockchain Ecosystem. She has also been teaching blockchain in university master's programs, and in 2019 was selected by the Financial Times as a market shaper. Welcome, Coty. We will start off by hearing a short presentation from Norberto on his experience and work in the field of AI policy and governance and its relevance for the Metaverse. And then Coty will join us to discuss some interesting questions on this topic. Norberto, you have the floor, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have a presentation I think is already projected, so let me know if that is not the case. But I'm counting that you can see my presentation. First of all, yes. I want to thank you so much to the organizer of the Lisbon Law and Tech conference for having me, and special thanks to Professor Luis Barreto Xavier for the invitation. I am originally from Lisbon, and I've been working on law and tech for a while, so Lisbon Law and Tech is close to a perfect combo for me. So thanks again for having me. I lead a team at Meta that handles the company's external strategic policy position regarding artificial intelligence and machine learning. One important part of our work is to contribute proactively to the AI policy discussion, establishing programs and forums with policy community at large, with the goal of informing and advancing the debate on AI governance. So I wanted to start this quick presentation by taking a trip down memory lane. When Facebook started, now Meta, 18 years ago, we mostly typed text on websites. That was the way that we interacted on the internet. When we got phones with cameras, the internet then became more visual and mobile, and as connections got faster, video became a much richer way to share things. So we've gone from desktop to web to mobile, from text to photos to video. So in this progression, the Metaverse seems to be the logical evolution. It is the next generation of the internet, a more immersive 3D experience. The Metaverse is a successor to the mobile internet, a set of digital spaces, including 3D experiences that are all interconnected, so we can easily move between them. It will let us do things that we couldn't do in the physical world with people that we can't physically be with. The defining quality of the metaverse will be this feeling of presence, like you are there with another person or in another place. The new technologies that will enable the metaverse, virtual reality and augmented reality, are still in the early stages of development, and a lot of progress and thinking around the implications still need to take shape. But that is not necessarily true for another technology, artificial intelligence, which is in a more mature stage of development, let's say, and is already present in our daily lives, powering so many of the products and services that we all use. AI is and will be one of the main technological engines behind the building of the metaverse, underpinning breakthrough advancements in avatar-related technologies, automated translations, and digital assistants. These will all play an important part in the future makeup of the metaverse. So given the prominent role that AI will play, I think it is important to understand the work that is currently being done in terms of AI policy, namely the AI governance frameworks that industry, lawmakers, regulators, academia, and civil society are proposing and implementing. So my quick presentation will be about the work that my team is doing to inform the AI policy debate through an experimental governance program we call Open Loop. And the idea and the hope is that we can later discuss how this type of initiatives can help inform the metaverse policy debate. So Open Loop, very quickly, is a global program, and we connect policymakers and technology companies to help develop effective and evidence-based policies around AI and other emerging technologies. This is a program supported by Meta that builds on the collaboration and contributions of a consortium that is composed of regulators, governments, tech businesses, academics, and civil society. So through experimental governance methods, and I'll get there in a second, Open Loop members co-create policy prototypes, and they test new and different approaches to laws and regulations before they are enacted, in a way to improve the quality of rulemaking processes in the field of tech policy. Getting a little bit more into the details, you can think of Open Loop as a regulatory innovation lab that develops and tests a policy idea. This policy idea can be a proposed law, can be a self-regulation, can be a code of conduct, can be industry guidelines, can be ethical principles in the field of new and emerging technologies. So it's a very flexible and versatile program. It is empirical, and the idea is to provide evidence-based policy input to improve existing governance frameworks or inform new lawmaking processes. So basically, we try to look at how technology is built and deployed and translate this approach to policymaking. We all know that new technology is never created on one go. It's never the first version that goes directly to market. It actually goes through a continuous experimental and iterative process, a sort of trial and error method. Our proposition is to approach policy in a similar way to how technology is built, that is, through this experimentation and iteration. To be even more concrete, Open Loop follows a couple of fundamental steps when rolling out its programs. First, we start by gathering a group of tech companies. In this case, since we've been very active on the AI field, are companies that are offering products and services powered by this technology. They are the participants of the program. Second, we co-create normative frameworks, these policy prototypes, on specific topics related to AI. It can be about transparency and explainability, can be about risk assessment, can be about operationalizing a certain technical requirement. So these are the policy prototypes. So we have on the one hand the participants, the prototypes, and what we do then is ask the participants to apply those prototypes to their specific AI applications and collect information about their experience in doing so. So in other words, we test and evaluate these prototypes under real-world conditions. And we do this by collecting information directly from the participants as they apply these frameworks to their specific products and services. We ask questions about, for example, how clear, operational, and effective these policy prototypes are. And in this way, we learn both about their strengths, but also limitations. We continuously apply the lessons learned through the program to keep iterating and improving those prototypes, those normative frameworks. And at the end of the day, the goal is to deliver evidence-based policy recommendations to policymakers. And all of this based on the findings of the program and the feedback that we collect from the participants. In a way, we try to run a sort of like reality checks on tech policies and apply this methodology to support policymaking. The idea is really to explore different approaches and possible angles for regulation and to provide actionable input to regulators and lawmakers. We leverage a methodology that we call policy prototyping, and it's very similar yet very different from the very hype term nowadays that we have a regulatory sandboxes. So they both belong to the experimental governance family, but they actually do different things and operate in different contexts, namely in different regulatory environments. So let me spend a minute just outlining the differences between one and the other. Regulatory sandboxes operate in the context of existing legislation. They allow for the testing of technological innovations under a regulator's oversight. They are particularly useful when trying to reform existing rules to accommodate new technological advances. So regulatory sandboxes have been very much used around the world to experiment with changes to existing financial regulatory rules so that they can better accommodate new financial technology applications and tools. Policy prototyping, on the other hand, is less formalistic, let's say, and operates in the absence of existing legislation. The idea is really to allow for regulatory experimentation when we are contemplating or discussing a new regulatory framework, rather than updating an existing one to accommodate new technology. An advantage of policy prototyping that can be very much complementary to regulatory sandboxes is to provide a more holistic experimental governance platform. So we can examine and test different regulatory and non-regulatory instruments, draft laws, regulations, but also standards, ethical frameworks, principles, or codes of conduct. So in this way, policy prototyping can actually provide us with a testing platform to explore different combinations and calibrations amongst these different instruments. Very quickly, we follow a methodology in all the programs that we deploy. We start by analyzing the regulatory landscape to identify governance gaps. We then define the scope and the objective of the program, the types of partners and participants that we need, that we then select and onboard to start the program. We also obviously create a policy prototype, and this can either be from scratch or we leverage an existing one. And we also create a design test framework, basically a document that outlines how do we collect that feedback. And when we do, we then evaluate and derive the policy recommendations. An interesting thing about this program is how do we actually collect this feedback from the participants? And we leverage a mobile ethnography approach. These tend to be apps that are actually used by product and marketing teams to test products and services before they are released in the market. Let's imagine, for example, before shipping an iPhone, you send it to a sample of users to understand how that particular device will resonate with that sample of users. So we actually use mobile ethnography, but instead of testing a product, we test a policy. So we engage the participants in surveys. We ask them to upload videos about their experience in dealing with that policy. We conduct interviews and we organize workshops. And basically, we focus on 3 analytical angles. This is what we try to understand from the policy prototype that we are exposing and asking the participants to implement in their own business process. First of all, we try to understand if the policy is clear. Is it understandable? Did the norm addressee actually understand what was required, expected of them based on the instructions that the policy provides? We also assess its effectiveness. Did the prototype actually contribute to reaching or achieving its overall goal? And this in the field of AI can be, for example, ensuring that the AI decision-making process is explainable, transparent, and fair. So basically, a policy will be deemed to be effective if it successfully enables the accomplishment of its goals. And last but not least, we also assess how actionable, implementable that policy is, the extent to which the prototype equips the participants with the means to implement its guidance. So if the participants, by reading the policy, can readily act upon and implement the guidance, then we consider it to be actionable and implementable. And here we specifically look at technical feasibility and costs that are involved in complying with the policy prototype. So we look at elements like time that needs to be spent, resources, or level of expertise. This is the global program. So very quickly, we've been deploying this in different regions, in Europe, in Asia, in India, in Latin America. Actually, the first open loop program that we deployed was in Europe, and we prototyped an AI impact assessment. We are now carrying out a second program in Europe where we are actually selecting and testing specific legal provisions of the draft EU AI Act. We're looking at technical requirements, transparency disclosures. We're looking actually at a section on regulatory sandboxes and overall the taxonomy of actors that is outlined draft legislation. We are with over 50 AI companies in Europe and other partners, including the government of Estonia and the Malta Digital Innovation Authority. In Asia and LATAM, we partnered with the data protection authorities of Singapore and Mexico to test policy prototypes and regulatory frameworks on AI transparency and explainability. And in India, we are dedicating a program to the operationalization of the AI ethical principle of human centricity, and hereby taking into account the specific local and regional context in that exercise. We more recently are about also to launch a program in Brazil and Uruguay where we are prototyping the use of privacy enhancing technologies. So let me end where we started. The metaverse will obviously not be built overnight. There are a number of both technological and policy governance issues that need to be sorted out. The metaverse, even more than AI, I believe, presents important questions around different regulatory approaches, around scope, around coexistence and interplay with existing, with accountability and enforcement. So I believe that one way to go about these questions and deal with this uncertainty is through policy experimentation, testing what works and what does not, to reduce that margin of uncertainty, paving the path for the building of the metaverse in a responsible and trustworthy manner. Looking forward to the debate, and thank you for your attention.
Very interesting presentation, which already gave us some food for thought and raised some important questions that I think we'll touch upon in our discussion further ahead. I would like now to turn the discussion to some topics that will help us better understand all this hype and also some hope around the metaverse and the difficulties it is having in reaching a level of mass adoption. So I would like to ask Coty, and going back to more basic definitions, but also trying to make sense of this for perhaps some newcomers on the topic, if you could better help us better understand what is the metaverse and how do you actually see it being today and in the foreseeable future?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me today, and congratulations, Norberto, for your presentation. Regarding the question, it's fun because Norberto already defined the metaverse as an evolution of the internet, but in my opinion, I think that there's a lot of confusion around what is the metaverse and what it's not, as there are several definitions and there's no consensus on one. I mean, we are hearing calling metaverse to practically every virtual world that exists in 3 dimensions. So there's people that define it as an evolution of the internet, an evolution of our digital environment in a way that converges with our physical life. Others are defining it as an ecosystem of 3D virtual worlds that are immersive, interactive, where you can do anything, play, socialize, shop. But I think that, I mean, it is still under construction. It remains to be seen, and we don't know yet if there's going to be one platform, several platforms, interoperable, and what's going to be the technology underlying, if it's going to be using blockchain or not. As currently I see that there are 2 different types of, let's call them virtual worlds. I don't like to say metaverse in plural, right? I see those that are using blockchain, those that are not using blockchain. Regarding the last ones, they are mostly multiplayer video games like Fortnite, Roblox, that they are currently the most tangible experiences of metaverse that exist today. And I consider them like prototypes that are playing a relevant role for the development of the technology, not only artificial intelligence, but virtual reality, augmented reality, etc. And these platforms that we see today, they are independent of each other. They are virtual worlds, metaverses in plural, but and they have billions of users globally. But in these platforms, the player that can buy in-game assets with a specific currency of the game, they can buy the skin for the avatar, the clothes, the weapons, etc., and get rewards when they provide value to the game. These assets are inside those platforms, then you cannot take them outside the game. So they act as silos, right? And the owner of those assets is not the player, but the platform. Those assets are kind of lent to the player. But on the other side, we see that the use of blockchain technology can potentially help to build a metaverse interoperable, right? So you have the ability to own and transfer value without third parties. Let me provide you some examples. By using blockchain, it could potentially help you to have the same avatar in different platforms. Users could be owners, builders of this ecosystem in various ways. For example, I could create accessories for my avatar, sell them, exchange them for tokens, then for my local currency, and buy something in the physical world, right? And also there's another interesting property regarding blockchain, to finish with my answer, that this technology is open and composable. So that means that, for example, a decentralized finance application could use the virtual car that you own in a video game as a collateral for a loan. So that means that composable makes all these applications like Lego pieces that can connect and interact with each other. So, I mean, I think that there's still a lot to be seen, a lot to be built, and a lot of questions around the metaverse. Norberto, I don't know what you think, your visions from Meta.
I would actually like to hear Norberto's views on this and how he sees the discussion around this interoperability and the existence of multi-platforms for the metaverse. Please, Norberto, feel free to comment on this.
Sure. So just doubling down on this idea of evolution of the internet and the successor to the mobile internet. I mentioned in my presentation that one of the distinguishing traits of the metaverse will be this feeling of presence, of being able to be in a place with someone that actually you are physically distanced from one another, but having that feeling of co-presence, that you are actually in the same space. So I think it's important to see or to envisage the metaverse as a sort of like embodied internet, where instead of just viewing content, you are actually in it. So you are surrounded by content, and you are interacting with it in a very different way, in a much more organic and natural way than we currently do with 2D apps or web pages. I think another way to kind of narrow this vision of the metaverse is also to understand how these spaces will be accessed. So the metaverse will connect people using many different devices and a variety of technologies. Beyond computers and smartphones, people will be able to access the metaverse through VR headsets, but also through wearable devices like smart glasses. So it's important to take into account also hardware and software that will be involved in enabling access to the metaverse. Although it's important to already give some glimpses of what the metaverse is and can offer through the devices that we currently have as mainstream. So that's some work that Meta is doing in enabling also through our smartphones and 2D apps to actually understand and experience, although not a fully immersive dimension of the metaverse, but to have a glimpse of what that will actually be and entail in the future. I think that the experiences and interactions in the metaverse will actually feel more like the ones we have in person and less like the ones we currently have in this call, for example, over Zoom. So these experiences will be immediate. So we'll be moving from sending messages and posting content to actually speech-based communication that will feel much more like face-to-face conversations. As I mentioned, it will be more embodied experiences. So we'll be moving from typing on the keyboard or looking at tiny faces on a laptop to actually being able to see and use our whole body to communicate, through gestures, through glances, etc. And we'll be also, and obviously, more immersive. So we'll be moving from looking at a screen to being able to share a space where everyone there can really have the feeling of hearing, seeing, and feeling what's around them. The other thing that I would just mention here is that the importance of seeing this as enhancing our experiences and not replacing them, or not replacing in-person contact. I don't think we'll ever beat being together in person, and that is not the point of the metaverse. But when that is not possible, I believe that the metaverse will get us pretty close, because the interactions in the metaverse will feel much more like the ones we have in daily life, in close contact with someone in person. there's a lot to talk, and I can mention, the importance of the blog, of the interoperability and portability. I don't know if you want me to get into that right now, as I think that's super important and has to do with all the issues around the governance of the metaverse.
To hear something about that, yes, please.
So sure. So I think that, like the internet, the metaverse will not be and should not be built by just one company. We cannot and won't be the ones as Meta setting the rules for how this works. I think it's important to make sure that people will not get stuck in a siloed metaverse into an Apple metaverse, an Epic metaverse, a Meta metaverse. So this different virtual spaces really need to be seamlessly interconnected and not gated off. And obviously this will require new standards, norms, and technical specifications that need to be agreed collaboratively by different stakeholders and through different bodies. So I would talk a little bit about the governance of the technical standards on how the metaverse actually needs to be built across devices and platforms. And this will require interoperability on fundamental standards and protocols. Just to be a little bit clearer on why is this important, different experiences within the metaverse need to be compatible. So if you want to be able to use your same avatar to represent your virtual identity in different places, those places need to be talking to each other. If we believe that we will be buying and creating something in the metaverse, those items should be useful in different contexts and across different contexts and not locked in one platform. It's important for people to know that they own those items and not the platform where they happen to be. In terms of how important those standards are, let's take an example of interoperable standards that most of us are very familiar with, which is the HTML language code. So basically, through this language, developers are building websites, and those can be read by all types of internet browsers. So traveling in the metaverse should actually be as easy as clicking on a link on the internet. So we will need a similar type of standards to make that happen. We can also think of standards more on the hardware front. So let's think about, for example, USB ports that allow different devices to connect together. These are crucial because they provide a common foundation that allows seamless communication across different devices and platforms. And so the way that we see the crucial importance of interoperability is to imagine metaverse as a sort of building where each floor supports the one above. So there will be different levels of interoperability and different kinds of technical standards for each of those floors. So we can start with the foundations of this building that include the hardware. We're talking about phones, VR headsets, AR glasses, and all the technical protocols and standards that need to ensure that these various technologies can interact. Then we move up. We go to the ground floor of the metaverse, and this is where that will be built on top of this interoperable protocols and standards. So this is a sort of intermediate layer where platforms, institutions, and other networks will create the universe of products that make up the 3D worlds of the metaverse. And then we finally get to the first floor of the metaverse, and this is where we'll have access to the metaverse as a user and where the vast array of experiences will be available. So this is where all apps and experiences will live and will support the ability for creators to design these spaces. So in the same way that we've been for years and years creating all these technical standards and protocols, the same thing needs to happen, and it is actually already happening in the metaverse. So there are a number of, and Coty mentioned also the importance of blockchain as a sort of like glue to the metaverse to prevent of having different metaverses, let's say. And I would also add to that the importance of cross-industry collaboration that is already happening to make that conversation happen and to make sure that we are also walking towards that level of interoperability that we need. So let me just mention a couple real quick. We have an XR association that Meta is a founding member, XRA, and this helps build responsible XR, and this includes virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, and all these type of immersive technologies. Within the XRA association, we have also an XR advisory council that we also just joined. And here we are sharing this space with policymakers, with experts and academics to address these key issues that I've been mentioning, namely the interoperability issue. Another one is the Metaverse Standards Forum. So this is a forum that brings together leading standards organizations and companies for industry-wide cooperation and interoperability of standards. We have companies like Adobe, Epic Games, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Sony Interactive Entertainment, Unity, Worldwide Web Consortium that are all part of this forum. And last but not least, and an interesting initiative from the governance standpoint, was the initiative called Defining and Building the Metaverse Initiative that has been launched by the World Economic Forum, and that was announced in Davos earlier this year. And here, the idea is really to bring together key stakeholders to build this interoperable, safe, and inclusive metaverse. It's an initiative that convenes more than 60 leading technology and other sector companies, but also experts, academics, and civil society. This initiative, and I'll end here, focus on two key areas: governance of the metaverse and value creation. For governance, what this initiative attempts to do is to address how the technologies and environments for the metaverse can be developed in a safe, secure, and interoperable way. And value creation is about identifying the incentives and risks that businesses, individuals, and society will encounter as the metaverse is built and comes to life. So there's a couple of thoughts on the interoperability. We can even dive deeper, but I hope this can be useful for the discussion we're having.
Of course, and building on your answer, I would like to now turn to Coty and ask her about the economic potential of the metaverse and the opportunity that this means for businesses and also consumers, of course, and also ask you to speak a little bit about the initial reaction from both of these groups.
So you mean how significant is going
yes,
to be
the significance of the economic opportunity for the impact, yes.
Okay, so there's already some consultancy firms that have well, let's say, given some numbers on how big the opportunity of the metaverse could be. We've heard Bloomberg, for example, that estimates that the revenue opportunity is going to be in approximately 800 billion in 2024. McKinsey is going further, saying that it's going to generate around $5 trillion impact by 2030. And that's equivalent to the size of Japan, the world's third largest economy today, right? From those 5 trillion, I'm remembering that around 2 trillion are going to be in e-commerce. So I guess that one of the most disrupted sectors with the metaverse is going to be e-commerce. And we are seeing already brands that are leveraging VR and AR, I mean, virtual reality, augmented reality, to offer a new level of experience in 3D, navigable, with branded spaces, allowing customers to experience and buy virtual and physical goods at the same time, while also leveraging the technology to enable these customers to try out products that maybe are not available in a store. So the metaverse presents a huge opportunity for retailers to reimagine and personalize the store environment for individuals and for customers, right? The fashion industry, as well, the luxury industry, is experimenting, launching virtual clothes in gaming, as Balenciaga did in Fortnite, and that resulted in like approximately 40% increase in the searches of the brand the days after that launch, right? So there's going to be a big impact in e-commerce, but also in entertainment and everything that relates to social networking, marketing, concerts, for example. I've heard that in some years, half of the concerts are going to be held in the metaverse, right? There's no limits on how many people can attend your concert, no logistic problems as we have right now. But it will also have a lot of impact on learning and training as well. And also we are already seeing some experiments on how the metaverse would help surgery and doctors on how to train on how to do that surgery without any risks. So, I mean, the impact is going to be huge. It's difficult to say how big it's going to be, but I think that there's consensus on that this is a huge opportunity, and that the sectors that are going to be more impacted are e-commerce and entertainment. That also means gaming, for sure.
Of course. And you see these as the first sectors being impacted in terms of adoption from consumers. Do you have any data or any feedback in terms of what has been the first experiences, or the first way the people are experimenting with the metaverse?
Well, let's say like the top use cases, the top things that companies are already experimenting or implementing are obviously marketing campaigns, learning and development for employees. That's something that, for example, in the bank, we are already testing. Meetings in the metaverse, events, conferences, and also there's some initiatives on product design or digital twinning as well. But I mean, there's a lot to see, and I see that consumers, depends on their degree of digitalization, are getting into the metaverse or adapting to this new trend easier ones than other. It's fun because we talk a lot about the metaverse, but I think that most of the users are in gaming platforms. If you look at platforms like Decentraland, that they are very popular, there's around 1,000 users right now in Decentraland, and that's not that much, right? But I mean, there's a lot of hype right now, but from my opinion, the impact is not that big. We need better devices, better laptops, headsets, etc., and also better experiences to get to get into it. I don't know if you've tried some of these platforms, but you get tired after some time using them. So there's a lot of work to do. I mean, a lot.
Certainly. Norbert, do you have any comments on this, the economic impact and the take on from the consumers?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of economic impact, I think Coty really covered really well. I think what I can add here is what Meta is doing to create or help create this economy on the surfaces that we are developing for the metaverse, and in what way we believe this will have benefits for consumers, for developers, for businesses, and for users, obviously. And then I would also mention, and following up on Coty, also what needs to happen actually for this economy to take off. But in terms of the approaches that we are undertaking to create incentivize this economy, we are, and I've kind of mentioned previously, we are partnering with multiple industry partners to promote standards and protocols. And again, interoperability will be key to all this. We are also beginning some early forays into Web3 technologies, particularly blockchain-based assets that we hope will serve as a foundation for interoperable digital goods and services in the metaverse. We're also working in empowering creators in Horizon Worlds. This is our VR platform to build experiences and games and find their communities, and also build businesses. And for that, we developed a monetization partner program that will give creators tools to sell items in their worlds and in the future across our metaverse offerings, such as in avatar stores. This partner program is designed to reward creators for being trustworthy actors in Horizon, and for that we deploy a number of integrity frameworks that need to be abide by. By being part of this program, creators will get access to item sales, to bonuses, and to support from Meta partner managers. We are also, and this is important, also working to connect the metaverse to the existing platforms, apps, and traditional 2D screens, so that users can already become more familiar with this type of experience as hardware becomes more available. So while still this is not a reality at scale, we are offering the opportunity to participate in the metaverse economy through the devices that we already have and are already mainstream today, while we, in the meantime, keep building the new devices that will give access to this new reality. We're also training the next generation of creators and developers, and for that we're developing a number of initiatives for creators to build their careers, to learn new skills, and this includes augmented reality and virtual reality. And just to give a very concrete example, our first formal AR training and professional certification program that we call Spark AR curriculum is already available. But let me just end by just listing what I think are some important issues that remain to be addressed in order for us to kick off this economy at scale and everywhere. So one would be the need for reliable access to high quality broadband for retail users. The other would be significant investment in infrastructure and spectrum by governments and companies. Also reducing the market access barriers for the import-export of VR and AR hardware. The recognition also of digital assets as a class of property that is protected and subject to legal enforcement, effected through trade agreements and new international standards. Also, accessibility of the metaverse through current 2D devices, and also, or even more important, affordability of 3D devices that will be the ones through which we will experience fully the metaverse. Last but not least, also a lot of work on ensuring the free flow of data across borders and reduced data localization requirements will also be an issue that needs to be addressed for the metaverse to become a reality.
Thank you very much, Norberto. I think you just touched upon two or more issues here that I would like to also ask Coty for an opinion on, which is actually related to specific regulation or specific areas of policy that should require more attention. Do you think it's the right time to intervene, or is it too soon, Coty?
I think that we are already late. Yes, as usually happens, technology evolves super quickly and very often regulation lags behind. So it is not too soon, and governments and regulators should start ASAP. I mean, we are already late, for example, with cryptocurrencies. MiCA, the markets in crypto assets regulations, has just been approved, but it will take like 18 months until it gets into force. And they left behind the non-fungible tokens, the NFTs, that is this way of representing digital assets in blockchain. So that's why I'm saying that we are already late. I'm worried specifically about three things. I'm not a lawyer, I'm an engineer, so probably Norberto has a lot more to say regarding this question. But I'm worried about identity and how to address the use of online anonymity to commit crimes, for example. I'm worried about data protection and privacy. So how can we ensure that individuals retain control over their personal data? And in the metaverse, there's going to be a lot of data and biometrics as well. So how can we secure that? And how can we secure as well transactions? Because there's going to be a lot of economic transactions in the metaverse. And the other thing is that when considering legal implications of any legal act, of which jurisdiction is going to apply, right? Because this metaverse is going to be global. So those are some of the things that worries me most right now, and I think that we are late.
Yeah, sometimes it's discussion whether it's too soon or too late, but as you said, normally the law only comes after and late for new technologies and developments. But Norberto, please feel free to comment also on and expand on your previous points on the need for these regulatory changes.
Sure. So this obviously has a lot to do with the presentation I delivered earlier on. And apart from the timing of regulatory intervention, I think we need to think of how regulatory intervention should intertwine, coordinate, and calibrate with a vast array of other governance instruments and tools. So what is really fascinating about the AI policy debate, and I think will be something similar that we'll see in the metaverse, is to understand how all these policy initiatives, and in the AI space, it started with ethical principles and framework, moving now to hardcore legislation, but also combined with standardization. How do these different governance instruments should be talking to each other? How can they complement each other? So I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have, is to find and fine-tune the right calibration. So it's legislation has its space that is needed, but it's also equally important to understand how that legislation should cohabit with other governance tools and approaches. So let me give you a couple of examples when we look at companies that are building for the metaverse, and what governance instruments and tools they also work on that needs to find its connection to other initiatives from governments and lawmakers. So talking about, for example, policies and codes of conduct for platforms and apps. So we have a code of conduct for virtual experiences that basically sets a baseline for experiences across the MetaQuest platform. Basically outlines what is and what is not allowed on our apps, prohibits conduct and content that does not align with values of safety, privacy, authenticity on the platform. So that's one way to look also at governance through this type of codes of conduct. Also, then we have more technical tools like user, creator, or developer tools. Safety tools like blocking, muting, reporting behavior in the metaverse. So this is something that we're actively working on that will also be important, where we can actually technically inform some of the values and principles that we have embedded in the building of the metaverse. Safety and privacy by design is also an important manifestation of these more technical tools. For example, age gating inappropriate content on the metaverse can be an example. I could go more and talk also about the need for educational resources. For example, in Horizon Worlds, there is additional information that we provide users before they choose to enter a given world. So this includes a description of the experience, comments from other users about that experience, and an indicator if that experience is appropriate or not for adult audiences only. So this is, again, an example of that. I mentioned the collaboration and industry collaboration that we are engaged, but also there are user-generated rules and norms that also will play a role. Again, a very specific example in Horizon Worlds, we've built the ability to set rules like be respectful that need to be acknowledged by people entering a given space. So apart from all these different governance instruments and tools that need to find a way to cohabit, let me just tell you a little bit about the policy areas that we are particularly working on and paying attention to. And this would be what we call integrity in terms of safety, privacy, but also equity and inclusion. So in terms of integrity, this is pretty straightforward. The need to build for safety in the metaverse, making sure that people will want to spend time in the metaverse in a safe manner. Equity and inclusion already alluded to this, ensuring that these technologies are designed inclusively, that we can really leverage the metaverse to reduce the link between location and opportunity, so we can expand access to information and learning channels of the metaverse to minorities and marginalized groups. There is the opportunity to open up creative work to more individuals and increase economic opportunity regardless of geographical location or language. So this can be huge if it's well done. So the need to consider everyone and understand how the metaverse will be experienced by different people will be key. Already mentioned also the importance of access, of making sure that people can easily access the devices through which they will experience the metaverse, and how they can do that already through the devices that they have. Mentioning also privacy, and I think Coty also mentioned this. We and every company building for the metaverse needs to have the obligation to take a very responsible approach to explain how data is used, what novel types of data are being processed, how do we enable control over the processing of that data to users, how we minimize the amount of data we collect, and also how we leverage privacy enhancing techniques like on-device processing or differential privacy when building the metaverse. So there's a lot there that can be further unpacked, but my main message is to really take all of this holistically and think of governance frameworks that are really talking to all these different tools and approaches in ways to maximize all the benefits that the metaverse has to offer and minimize its risks.
Thank you very much for that very, very interesting answer and complete with all of those aspects and views. I would like just ask one last question to Coty on the approach that we're seeing also in the market. Some companies are more focused on the augmented and mixed reality enhancements and less so in the virtual reality. Do you see this as the first technology to go through, or do you think this will all build up to an experience of both types of virtual and augmented and mixed reality cases?
Yeah, so I mean, there's not only those technologies that are that form the metaverse. It's not only VR, AR, MR that you have not mentioned, but that's a mixed reality. But also you've got artificial intelligence, the 5G, edge computing, etc. Right? So, but regarding your specific question about augmented reality and virtual reality and mixed reality, they all have an important role, as the metaverse, it's a combination of all of them. And I think that it's worth explaining the differences and uses of each one. So virtual reality is a term that most of you are familiar with. So it refers to these 3D computer-generated virtual environments or virtual worlds that either replicate the real environment or they are imaginary worlds. And they are created with a combination of realistic sounds, images, and other sensations through devices like the headsets, helmets, haptic globes that have like sensors, so you detect the touch feeling. And with virtual reality, the person is able to interact with that environment, but it doesn't account for the user's actual surroundings. So it's very recommended to be in a spacious environment to avoid accidents with real things that are around you. It is quite immersive, and if you use not only the headset or the glasses, but also like a body sensor, you could control your avatar with your entire body. There are some examples that you can use virtual reality in the metaverse, like, for example, learning history by immersing yourself in the ancient Rome, right? So that's virtual reality. Augmented reality exists on top of our physical world. So it allows users to see the actual environment through the screens of the phones or the tablet, or by using smart glasses. And it makes like virtual changes on the screen. So you see digital items that overlap on top of your environment, but they don't interact with each other. So it doesn't account for the things that are around you in your environment. Some examples of AR are Pokemon Go, that I guess that you already know, Snapchat filters, virtual makeup, and even furniture fittings. There's IKEA that has developed a smartphone app that it's called IKEA Place, that allows the customers to use the augmented reality through their smartphone's camera to place the brand's furniture items in your own home. So you can visualize how the product looks exactly in the place that you are going to put that piece of furniture. And then you've got the mixed reality, that it's the merging of the virtual and physical world. So it's like an evolution of the augmented reality that takes into account the items that you have in your space, in your environment. So imagine if it's Pokemon Go with mixed reality, you don't see the Pokemon the Pokemon just around you, but it interacts with the things that you have and could be on top of the table, for example, or behind a sofa. There are many applications of mixed reality, for example, in educations to help students learn while they are interacting with physical and virtual objects at the same time, and teachers can instruct them remotely. So I think that the biggest challenge here is to create devices. This is always about interoperability. So creating devices that are acceptable to consumers and deliver a great experience in all these different realities. A great augmented reality experience, but also delivering virtual reality functionality. So it's about combining them all.
Thank you very much for that explanation. I think that sums up what the time that we had has passed very quickly, and now we're almost reaching the allotted time for the session. I would like to thank you both for your time and the relevant issues that you brought to this debate. And I would also like to thank those who attended online and invite you to write to us either on Abreu Advogados website or our social networks. I'm sure we would have more topics to discuss here for a longer time, but now I would like to introduce some more innovation. We will now move on to present the Knowledge Institute book on the Metaverse. One more step to have a discussion in a fully online and virtual Metaverse experience to present our book, in which I would like you to join us.
Especial gosto em fazer esta transição que a tecnologia agora nos permite. Ainda há minutos estava convosco no nosso evento do Lisbon Law Tech e agora recebo-vos aqui no nosso auditório do Metaverse. A sessão de abertura deste ano do Lisbon Law Tech não podia ter sido numa melhor altura, em que cada vez temos mais exemplos reais de como a tecnologia e o digital estão e vão continuar a impactar o nosso dia-a-dia. Gostaria de agradecer uma vez mais aos nossos convidados, Coty de Monteverde e Norberto de Andrade, pela sua presença e pelos seus excelentes contributos. A gravação de todas as sessões ficará disponível no nosso site, em lisbonlawandtech.com, e naturalmente no site e redes sociais da Abreu Advogados. Queria agora falar-vos então do Metaverse, uma realidade em desenvolvimento e de difícil definição. Ainda agora saiu da ficção literária e cinematográfica e do mundo dos jogos de computador para as nossas vidas e para as vidas das empresas. Tem também existido um aumento do interesse e do volume de negócios relacionados com o metaverso, especialmente acentuado com os tempos pandémicos. Exemplo destes investimentos significativos seria o das grandes empresas tecnológicas com a transformação do Facebook em Meta e a compra pela Microsoft da Activision. Vemos assim que o metaverso nos coloca desafios urgentes que atravessam as empresas, mas também os seus trabalhadores, os programadores, os criadores de conteúdos, os governos e, claro, os consumidores. Por isso mesmo, o metaverso tem implicações sociais óbvias, o que justifica a definição de algumas regras que permitam uma experiência ética, segura e inclusiva. Tais regras devem também definir questões como a proteção de dados, segurança, propriedade intelectual, saúde física, sustentabilidade, tributação, entre muitos outros temas. Embora a regulação específica do metaverso não esteja ainda entre as prioridades dos legisladores nacionais ou supranacionais como a União Europeia, importará termos em conta as dimensões jurídicas de alguns dos riscos que podemos associar ao seu desenvolvimento. É que, para além de estabelecer limites, o direito é também um instrumento para a criação de valor para as empresas e os indivíduos. A verdade é que as oportunidades de negócio geradas ou potenciadas pelo metaverso terão maior probabilidade de sucesso se forem já pensadas para estar conformes com as exigências legais e da regulação. Com efeito, existem já diversas normas e princípios jurídicos aplicáveis às atividades envolvidas na construção, na oferta de serviços e na utilização das inúmeras possibilidades que o metaverso oferece. E é por isso mesmo que hoje apresentamos este e-book, A Direito no Metaverso, que temos vindo a preparar e que pretende trazer uma primeira e breve abordagem a estas questões nas diversas áreas, das quais irei dar algumas notas e exemplos, começando por destacar desde logo o tema da proteção de dados e da cibersegurança, onde as questões que surgem são inúmeras, desde os dados relacionados com a criação de um avatar e de uma identidade digital, passando pelo tema da monitorização online, virtual, e terminando nas difíceis questões de jurisdição e transferência de dados. Temos também um artigo sobre o mercado de capitais, no qual é feita uma análise dos smart contracts programados em blockchain, que permitem transação de criptoativos, uma das formas de celebrar contratos no Metaverse. Como não poderia deixar de ser, algo que é sempre certo onde quer que estejamos, falamos também de impostos. A tributação de transações comerciais e de rendimentos gerados no Metaverso levantam interessantes interrogações e dificuldades de compatibilização com a legislação atual, que são também abordados neste livro. Temos depois ainda um capítulo sobre regulação e assuntos governamentais, as novas formas de interação com serviços públicos que facilitam a vida real e ajudam no urbanismo e planeamento das cidades através de digital twins e de simulações. Passamos ainda pelo direito laboral, com os casos relativos ao relacionamento dos trabalhadores e a interação dos avatares, casos de ofensas ou de assédio, e falamos também de propriedade intelectual, como não poderia deixar de ser, num capítulo intitulado Marcas e Direito de Autor no Metaverso, que tive o prazer de coautorar com a Margarida Castilho Silva, onde falamos do Metaverso como espaço de oportunidade comercial, nomeadamente para a promoção de produtos ou objetos virtuais novos ou de outros que reproduzem a aparência dos existentes no espaço físico. Gostaria assim de chamar a Margarida Castilho Silva para falar um bocadinho deste capítulo. Margarida?
Muito obrigada, Ricardo, e bom dia a todos os presentes e a quem nos assiste diretamente do Lisbon Law & Tech. Aproveito para congratular a Abreu Advogados e o Instituto do Conhecimento por terem tomado a iniciativa na apresentação do e-book A Direito no Metaverso, agradecendo de igual forma por me terem desafiado a participar no mesmo com a apresentação do tema Marcas e Direito de Autor no Metaverso, cujo artigo foi feito em colaboração com o aqui presente Dr. Ricardo Henriques. Conforme já mencionado, o metaverso é um fenómeno tecnológico disruptivo da realidade tal como a conhecemos, mas é também um espaço de oportunidade comercial, nomeadamente para a promoção de produtos ou objetos virtuais novos ou de outros que reproduzem a aparência dos existentes no espaço físico. Esta promoção e reprodução virtual tem vindo a ser estabelecida através dos já muito reputados NFTs, que funcionam como tecnologia essencial na aquisição de bens virtuais. Ora, os NFTs, não raras as vezes, têm por objeto determinados itens que, além de poderem ter o seu correspondente físico, se encontram protegidos por marcas com grande visibilidade junto do público em geral. Dir-se-á assim, pois que as marcas, enquanto fator de valorização de NFTs, apresentam-se como um ativo valioso no metaverso, não se devendo ao acaso a corrida pela sua proteção no espaço virtual, a fim de se evitarem alguns riscos, nomeadamente na sua utilização indevida ou não autorizada. Veja-se também que os NFTs colocam várias questões a respeito da matéria de direito de autor, tendo sido bastante discutido, entre outros tópicos, se, nos casos de representações virtuais de bens físicos, estamos perante uma verdadeira transformação ou adaptação da obra para um suporte diferente, neste caso digital, e se, consequentemente, poderemos falar em violações de direitos de autor já constituídos e ou no surgimento de outros. São, assim, alguns os desafios emergentes do metaverso nestas matérias e os quais fazem questionar se os regimes jurídicos, nomeadamente a nível de direito de marcas e direito de autor, são adequados e suficientes. No que concerne à proteção das marcas, interroga-se se a proteção já concedida através do registro, quanto a determinados bens físicos, abrange a sua proteção no espaço virtual. Ora, e atualmente a resposta apresentada tem sido pela negativa, e a sua justificação assenta no princípio da especialidade inerente ao direito de marcas, aplicável quer no direito português, quer no direito da União Europeia. O referido princípio determina que a proteção concedida é limitada aos produtos e aos serviços em concreto que se encontram abrangidos pelo respectivo registro. Há quem defenda, no entanto, que a resposta poderá ir no sentido contrário no caso de estarmos perante a utilização indevida de marcas de prestígio, onde é claro o intuito de aproveitamento sobre a respectiva reputação ou do caráter distintivo. Este entendimento, todavia, significará necessariamente que os titulares de outras marcas, que não marcas de prestígio, verão os seus direitos mais fragilizados ou não tão protegidos. Por esta razão, tem-se assistido a novos pedidos de registro que abranjam bens e ou serviços digitais, e ainda à criação de NFTs pelos próprios titulares como forma de afirmação e de ativação das respectivas marcas no metaverso. Esta estratégia terá por efeito pretendido o alargamento da proteção, mas também o alargamento do alcance e a interação das marcas com os demais operadores e consumidores no mercado, potenciando, dessa forma, a respectiva valorização. Em jeito de nota de rodapé, veja-se que a 23 de junho deste ano, o Instituto da Propriedade Intelectual da União Europeia, ao deparar-se com o aumento de pedidos de registro de marca da União Europeia para assinalar bens virtuais ou NFTs, informou o público do seu entendimento a respeito da classificação internacional de NIS que melhor se adequaria para assinalar esses mesmos bens. Ora, e segundo o Instituto, os bens virtuais encontram-se abrangidos pela classe 9, visto que são tratados enquanto conteúdo digital. Porém, advertiu o Instituto que o termo bens virtuais por si só será insuficiente, devendo, por essa razão, ser especificado o conteúdo a que os bens virtuais se referem. Por exemplo, bens virtuais descarregáveis, nomeadamente vestuário virtual. Por sua vez, já a nível da proteção do direito de autor, as soluções que têm vindo a ser apresentadas, além da via contenciosa perante a utilização não autorizada das obras em causa, circunscrevem-se à formalização e estipulação de cláusulas contratuais que melhor acautelem os interesses do titular do direito de autor da obra que for objeto de NFT, em particular no que respeita às formas de utilização e suportes dessa obra.
Muito obrigado, Margarida. Este é um tema em que existem já alguns litígios, não só relacionados com infrações de direito de autor, mas também com a utilização indevida de marcas de prestígio. Será que nos poderias dar alguns exemplos destes interessantes casos?
Muito obrigada pela questão, Ricardo. E claro, a nível de utilização indevida de marcas de prestígio, temos o exemplo do caso que opõe a marca de luxo francesa Hermès a um artista americano, Mason Rothschild, por ter criado e comercializado NFTs da icónica mala Birkin, cuja configuração se encontra protegida. Em causa, além da violação do direito de marca, suscitaram-se questões de concorrência desleal e de eventual diluição de marca. Um outro exemplo é o litígio que opõe a Nike à empresa StockX com fundamento na violação do exclusivo de marca, tendo sido ainda suscitado o ilícito de contrafação e de publicidade enganosa, visto que os NFTs criados por aquela empresa reproduziam na íntegra o design do calçado. Por sua vez, a nível de infrações de direito de autor, temos o exemplo do célebre caso que opôs o estúdio cinematográfico Miramax ao famoso diretor e realizador de cinema Quentin Tarantino, por este último ter comercializado NFTs de conteúdo de ficção nunca antes visto do filme Pulp Fiction. Em causa, além da violação de cláusulas contratuais, foi suscitada a violação do direito de autor da Miramax sobre a representação virtual do referido conteúdo. Com base nestes exemplos, dúvidas não restam de que os titulares do direito de autor, bem como os titulares dos direitos de marca, sendo confrontados com a expansão das realidades virtuais, deverão considerar estratégias para construir e fortalecer os seus ativos e o seu mercado virtual, cujo primeiro passo implicará necessariamente a obtenção de uma proteção adequada. Agradeço uma vez mais a oportunidade, terminando assim a minha apresentação. Obrigada.
Obrigado, Margarida, pelos excelentes exemplos que foram apresentados. É visível que poderemos vir a assistir e a viver nos próximos tempos neste mundo do Metaverse. Mas é isto e não só, porque não ficamos por aqui neste e-book. Os advogados da Abreu Advogados desenvolveram ainda mais temas. Gostaria assim de desafiar o Hélder Galvão, consultor da Abreu Advogados e co-coordenador deste e-book, para vos levar numa viagem pelas questões e dúvidas do Metaverse em outros interessantes temas. Hélder, por favor.
Obrigado, Ricardo e Margarida. De fato, os direitos de autor e a utilização de produtos e serviços no metaverso estão a desafiar as marcas. Será a tendência, não só neste, como nos demais temas abordados neste e-book. A estas áreas, juntam-se outras, tão relevantes como imobiliário, como aquisição de imóveis e espaços virtuais, questão dos tokens em blockchain, planejamento patrimonial e sucessório, como no exemplo sempre polêmico da herança digital, né, do legado digital, os acervos ativos e intangíveis, né? Os temas de ESG, o ESG no metaverso também, envolvendo não só as questões de accountability, de transparência, mas como também os aspectos de governança e sustentabilidade. Também questão muito importante de compliance, as infrações cibernéticas do metaverso, as questões envolvendo, né, delitos cometidos, né, no metaverso, qual será a legislação aplicável, principalmente nesse ambiente global. E também um tema bastante ainda a ser discutido e a ganhar cada vez mais importância, que é o tema de societário e M&A, a criação e comercialização de bens online, levando à criação de sociedades comerciais e as dificuldades inerentes à regulação da titularidade. Serão alguns temas abordados na apresentação de hoje e no e-book. Para tanto, convido aqui ao palco a Cláudia Isabel Costa, coautora do artigo Societário e M&A no Metaverso. Cláudia, por favor.
Obrigado, Hélder. Muito boa tarde a todos. É com muito gosto que participo neste evento para discutir temas que me são tão queridos. Agradeço à Abreu Advogados e ao Instituto de Conhecimento o convite que me foi dirigido e parabenizo esta iniciativa e espero que existam muitas mais, porque são temas que conhecem uma grande evolução, ou melhor, conhecerão uma grande evolução e que devemos monitorizar constantemente. Deixo também uma palavra de apreço ao Dr. Paulo Tarso Domingues, que escreveu comigo o artigo que faz parte do e-book de que estamos aqui a falar. E depois passaria então já ao meu tema e falaria sobre as possíveis relações que se poderá estabelecer entre as operações de fusão e aquisição e o metaverso. Eu queria já adiantar que eu diria que há aqui até um casamento perfeito entre ambas, porque, como verão, o metaverso irá permitir que as operações de fusão e aquisição se tornem talvez mais seguras, mais eficientes, digamos assim, em termos negociais, se posso utilizar aqui mecanismos que as tornem mais eficientes, mais fáceis na sua concretização e, por outro lado, as operações de fusão e aquisição farão, sem dúvida alguma, com que o metaverso se desenvolva, se expansa a níveis que se calhar ainda nem sequer estamos à espera. Então, podemos, digamos assim, apontar um primeiro nível de relação entre o M&A e o metaverso. Como referiu o Ricardo há pouco, estão a realizar-se importantes investimentos nesta área. O que se entende, para além de ser uma área tecnológica que é muito atrativa e que hoje em dia tem conhecido uma evolução estonteante, a verdade é que o metaverso em si reúne diferentes tecnologias, ou seja, é o produto da construção de diferentes tecnologias. Reúne a inteligência artificial, a internet das coisas, a cloud, a blockchain. E quem estuda estas áreas sabe que cada uma destas tecnologias, digamos assim, tem depois inúmeras subcategorias, subtécnicas, técnicas, etc. E tudo isto está a ser desenvolvido, está a ser experimentado e, portanto, temos assim diferentes empresas, muitas delas startups, que estão a desenvolver diferentes técnicas. Portanto, a dada altura torna-se interessante a algumas empresas reestruturarem os seus negócios e recorrerem a este tipo de instrumentos jurídicos para reunirem determinados recursos, determinadas sinergias que irão permitir o desenvolvimento e investigação de metaversos, a criação de metaversos, com múltiplas finalidades, seja para promoverem os seus próprios produtos, seja para alcançarem um público diferente, um público mais voltado para esta área tecnológica e que frequenta, digamos assim, o metaverso. Também podem reunir diferentes recursos, diferentes empresas para desenvolverem uma determinada tecnologia nova, diferente, ou também o fazem para captarem novos talentos. Exemplo disso é a Nike, que comprou a RTFKT, que foi criada, no fundo, durante a pandemia, segundo se sabe, e que produzia ténis virtuais, recorrendo a motores de jogo, NFTs, blockchain, realidade aumentada. Então, a Nike achou interessante e adquiriu esta empresa para criar os seus próprios ténis virtuais. Portanto, temos aqui um exemplo do que está a acontecer e do que acontecerá no futuro. Portanto, temos aqui um mercado a mexer, um mercado a intensificar-se e as operações de M&A são, sem dúvida alguma, instrumentos relevantes. Juridicamente falando, estas operações, à partida, não têm especiais especificidades ou especiais obstáculos, falando do ponto de vista societário propriamente dito. Claro que vai levantar muitas questões a nível das marcas, privacidade, proteção de dados, concorrência, mas do ponto de vista societário, puro e duro, à partida não se levantarão muitas questões. Quanto muito, se calhar, durante um processo negocial, quando da realização de auditorias legais, teremos que se calhar ter auditorias mais abrangentes que abarquem esta realidade, por exemplo. Depois temos então um outro nível que se pode ser identificado. Até agora falamos do metaverso enquanto negócio imediato destas operações. Agora vamos olhar para o metaverso como um instrumento, como um auxiliar destas operações de fusão e aquisição. O que eu quero dizer com isto? Hoje em dia, dito de outra forma, as operações de fusão e aquisição têm um longo processo negocial. Muitas delas têm um longo processo negocial em que há múltiplas reuniões entre as várias partes envolvidas. Muitas delas são realizadas através do Teams ou do Zoom, por exemplo. E, portanto, se calhar poderíamos pensar no metaverso como uma plataforma ideal para que determinadas partes do processo negocial decorram lá dentro. Da mesma forma como temos aqui um auditório virtual, temos aqui inúmeros avatares, eu estou aqui a falar convosco, vocês estão a olhar para o meu avatar e eu estou a passar uma mensagem, também poderíamos ter uma sala de reuniões virtual com vários avatares correspondentes às várias partes do processo negocial, a falarem desta forma e a tentarem fechar pontos da transação, discutirem pontos mais sensíveis da transação. Além disso, também se poderá explorar outras valências do metaverso, como armazenamento de documentação na blockchain, ou, por exemplo, recorrer à criptomoeda para efetuar pagamentos, o que for possível. Claro que isto levanta algumas questões práticas que devem ser devidamente salvaguardadas, perceber como é que poderá ser feita a autenticação dos usuários, garantir que o avatar diz quem diz ser, garantir a confidencialidade e a segurança e também o segredo comercial. Perceber depois como é que estes dados são gravados, se são ou não gravados, aliás, quem pode aceder ou não, porque eu não posso estar numa reunião relacionada com uma transação e entrar num avatar que nada tem que ver com aquilo, ou outros avatares poderem aceder depois ao que foi ali discutido, como é óbvio. Portanto, a nível jurídico, à partida também não há especiais dificuldades se encararmos o metaverso como uma plataforma, como um instrumento, desde que estas questões sejam devidamente salvaguardadas. Porque, por exemplo, em caso de litígio, será importante perceber como é que os dados são gravados, se são gravados ou não, porque se houver uma fuga de informação, se forem divulgadas informações relativamente às empresas envolvidas, alguém depois terá que ser responsabilizado. E temos que perceber como é que se vai conjugar depois estas responsabilidades entre a plataforma, as partes envolvidas, etc. Não sei se têm alguma questão. Helder, sempre que se sentir à vontade para me interromper, por favor, façam.
Sim, Cláudia. Tem uma observação a fazer, na verdade, uma pergunta. A Abreu tem se notabilizado em operações de M&A. Nesse sentido, podemos afirmar, podemos considerar que o metaverso poderá potencializar as operações de fusão e aquisições, principalmente em ambientes globais, transacionais? Qual a sua opinião a esse respeito?
Sem dúvida alguma, estou perfeitamente convicta disso. Como explicam alguns autores, como Luciano Floridi, o metaverso é um espaço digital no qual os utilizadores podem ter uma experiência virtual, tridimensional, imersiva e com algumas sensações até táteis e cinéticas. Portanto, temos aqui uma extensão da realidade em si mesma e tenho certeza que estas características farão com que se crie uma maior proximidade entre as partes no processo de negociação. Mesmo que estejam em diferentes partes do mundo, certamente permitirá que o processo seja mais eficiente, mais seguro e que dê pelo menos uma sensação de maior proximidade. Será um excelente substituto do Teams, do Zoom. Poderemos aqui explorar outras valências, como eu referi, como o armazenamento de informação, pagamento, Se calhar também ao nível da realização de auditorias legais poderá dar uma importante ajuda a nível da revisão dos documentos, como a inteligência artificial, aliás, já começa a dar. E, portanto, consigo imaginar um closing em que temos partes que estão em diferentes partes do mundo que estão a fechar o negócio. Não vejo aqui, desde que depois todas as formalidades sejam devidamente concretizadas para que tudo se torne eficaz, seja válido e eficaz, não vejo aqui questão. Pronto, dito isto, passarei então ao último nível de relação que se poderá estabelecer entre o metaverso e o M&A, se calhar aqui numa visão mais futurista, digamos assim. Como eu referi há pouco, o metaverso cria uma realidade virtual, que é uma extensão da realidade em si mesma. Portanto, a certa altura, a sensação que dá é que, de facto, tem uma reprodução do que já existe na realidade, mas a um nível virtual. E há quem fale já da criação de um sistema económico virtual em que se pode recorrer aqui ao uso de criptomoedas para pagar bens digitais, serviços digitais. Portanto, temos aqui um outro nível de relação entre os empresários e utilizadores, que podem... É interessante ver isto, porque nós falamos de metaversos, mas na verdade existem vários metaversos, diferentes realidades virtuais, e um avatar pode movimentar-se entre os vários metaversos. E é interessante perceber como é que nós podemos realmente pegar num bem digital. Vou dar um exemplo. No outro dia estava num metaverso, que era uma exposição de arte. Se eu compro um quadro, que no fundo é aquele bem digital, depois posso ir para um outro metaverso e nada me impede, não sei se impede ou não, mas em teoria poderei vendê-lo e poderei receber dinheiro por isso. E tudo se passa no metaverso, portanto, por que não termos um conjunto de avatares que cria uma sociedade comercial no metaverso? Não estou a falar da sociedade comercial que existe na realidade e que desenvolve a tecnologia metaverso, ou tecnologias associadas ao metaverso. Estou a falar de avatares que realmente criam uma sociedade comercial dentro do metaverso, que comercializam os seus bens e produtos virtuais neste metaverso. Portanto, isto é algo muito diferente. É algo diferente, porque nós estamos numa realidade virtual, conseguimos contactar com pessoas que estão em partes diferentes, podemos ter empresas virtuais e, por que não, temos operações de fusão e aquisição no metaverso. Só que este pensar nisto desta forma levanta muitas questões. Questões que eu até diria que são questões antigas perante situações novas, que é, vamos então ter o quê? Um espaço sem lei. Há pouco tempo víamos notícias sobre uma situação ou duas de violação de um avatar. E eu pergunto, o que é isto, no fundo? O que é isto? O que é que vamos fazer? Vamos ter aqui um espaço sem lei? Isto é possível? Como é que é possível? Como é que afeta? Que danos são causados? Transportando isto para o comercial, para o societário, para o M&A, que danos podem ser causados? Que danos são juridicamente relevantes? Esta sociedade é ou não uma verdadeira sociedade? Ou poderá ser? Eu já encontrei, por exemplo, sociedades de advogados no metaverso, virtuais. Pergunto-se, será que poderá haver no futuro tribunais virtuais? E a questão aqui, a velha questão é o que é o direito, não é? Qual é a sua função? Para que é que serve o direito? Como é que serve a sociedade? Para depois respondermos a como é que vamos regular o metaverso. Dentro do metaverso, temos de ter regras entre os avatares, fora do metaverso, ou seja, os algoritmos que suportam estas realidades têm que ser de alguma forma delimitados no seu âmbito de atuação, porque no âmbito da inteligência artificial fala-se muito disso, de entre aspas, pensar ético do algoritmo, um agir ético por parte do algoritmo. Será que podemos à partida introduzir algumas destas questões já a nível dos algoritmos para depois ter influência no metaverso? Vamos ter o quê? Uma polícia virtual? Lembrei-me agora. Portanto, como é que se vão... Há muitas questões que podem ser feitas. Como é que se vai reclamar a propriedade dos bens? Como é que se imporá a coercibilidade das normas no metaverso? Estas empresas terão o quê? Participações sociais virtuais? Como é que se determina a titularidade? Como é que será feita a transmissão? Portanto, não sairia daqui com as questões. A verdade é que o sistema jurídico não está pensado para estas realidades. Estamos todos num esforço de tentar entendê-las, de olhar para aquilo que temos a nível jurídico e como é que, até que ponto ele se aplica ou não e até que ponto temos que o alterar, em que medida temos que o alterar, porque são realidades que estão em constante mutação, portanto, isto tem que ser, também não podemos estar constantemente a alterar a legislação. Isto tem que ser tudo muito bem pensado por causa das implicações sociais e políticas que tem. Pronto, e com estas questões me despeço-me com mais questões do que soluções, mas acho que o primeiro passo é este, é entender o que é o metaverso, quais são as suas valências, como podemos utilizá-lo e ao pouco perceber, à medida que o tempo vai passando, perceber o que é que tem que ser regulado, de que forma, e tenho certeza que teremos aí um futuro cheio de desafios e de soluções jurídicas muito interessantes. Uma vez mais agradeço o convite. Muito obrigado, Hélder.
Obrigado, Cláudio, pelas reflexões sobre como podemos vir e agir e tirar o melhor proveito do metaverso na área de M&A. Como podemos observar, as possibilidades são muitas, diversas, múltiplas, e certamente o metaverso veio para ficar. Não poderia deixar de terminar essa sessão sem convidar o professor Luiz Barreto Xavier, presidente do Instituto de Conhecimento da Abreu Advogados, coordenador desta obra e um entusiasta do tema. Professor Luiz, por favor.
Obrigado, Hélder. Agradeço aos amigos, colegas e parceiros que se juntaram a nós para esta experiência de inovação, que é um dos propósitos do Instituto de Conhecimento. Continuamos no Lisbon Law and Tech, ainda que numa diferente dimensão. As muitas questões suscitadas pela concretização do metaverso motivaram a nossa equipa a escrever sobre o tema. Tenho, assim, o maior gosto em convidá-los a fazerem o download do nosso e-book através do QR Code que aparece aqui na sala e no vosso ecrã. Muitas incógnitas subsistem ainda. O Instituto de Conhecimento e a Abreu Advogados continuam atentos aos novos desenvolvimentos. Por isso, convido-vos a escreverem-nos com as vossas sugestões e questões. Os contactos de todos os autores estão também no livro e seria excelente conhecer a vossa perspectiva. Entretanto, acompanhem os próximos dias do Lisbon Law and Tech dedicados ao desenvolvimento de tópicos como Web3, NFTs, o caminho para o futuro nas sociedades de advogados e o papel do CIO e digitalização da justiça, painel no qual teremos a participação da Ministra da Justiça, para além de outros destacados oradores. Obrigado e até breve.